Hi guys, Cameron here, and welcome to one of the last videos in the Fall of the Necromancer campaign. This is the kind of roundup of the complete campaign. You'll hear the dog in the background plodding along, I do apologise. But this is the roundup of everything. This guy here is Matthew. He has been my opponent throughout the whole of the campaign. You'll have seen his arms before and heard his name, and you'll have seen his unpainted models, but you have not seen his face. Luckily enough, all my models were painted, and that's why you got to see my pretty face. Overall, Matthew, out of all of it, not scenario-based, which is out of the whole campaign, how do you think it went?
I think the scenarios were very, very good. I think the campaign as a whole was just a pleasure. I'd rate it a solid 8, 9 out of 10.
Okay, fantastic. So overall, you think it went real well. I think kind of the whole campaign was real good. It was kind of longer than I was expecting, I'll say. It was only 13 scenarios, but actually playing that week in, week out, and we had a couple of weeks off, that's 13 to kind of 16 weeks of a full year, and if you think that's actually a fair chunk of the year taken there, whereas normally when someone says, hey, let's play a campaign, I was expecting a couple of weeks sort of thing, but that's more of a me misunderstanding. As the scenarios and kind of campaign as a whole, I thought it was great. For you guys, just so you know, if you haven't been keeping track, Matthew and I have just totaled it up. There was 26 scenarios played, because there was 13 scenarios and we both played them each side. So out of 26, Evil won 17 of those times. Out of 8, Good won 8 times, and there was 1 draw, so that's the whole 26 there. So 17 for Evil, 8 for Good, and 1 draw out of all the scenarios.
And it's quite interesting that we noted some of the scenarios were very, very weighted towards Evil as well.
They certainly did seem to be. To be fair, some of that may well have been the campaign bonuses that were coming in. With running a campaign with that, you do get a little bit of those special rules coming in, and it does potentially make it easier. And then actually with that, you then get Evil winning that scenario, which then gives them a boost in the next scenario, which then gives them a boost in the next scenario, and they just keep on winning. It's almost a snowball effect. And there was only a few times that kind of stopped, and it was like, oh, thank goodness, and you kind of reset to a, I'll say, an Evil playing level, which is a little bit stranger, but hey well. But anyway, let's go through the scenarios. So, scenario number 1, the founding of Dorgal Doer. If you remember, Matthew, this is the one where we had the huntsman with the Rohan house in the middle, a couple of Rohan warriors, but obviously they weren't Rohan, they were huntsmen, and the Necromancer and a couple of orcs came. According to what I can remember, we actually flipped the scenario on its head. Obviously, the Necromancer is meant to take over, but Good actually won both of these scenarios. What are your thoughts on this scenario?
As I remember, in this scenario, it was really, really interesting, and it came down to the wire when I played as Evil. I absolutely crushed as Good, gave no quarter, but I tried to do the same as Evil, and it didn't really work out because, in addition to casting, what's that magical power the Necromancer has that causes a wound? Chill Soul?
A Chill Soul, yes.
Chill Soul. I was using that every turn, and I was also charging into combat because the Necromancer's fight 7, strength 6, and his defense 8 as well. So he's really, really chonky. And it came down to one single will point. There was one huntsman left, and he won the combat. And the Necromancer got banished.
Yeah, Necromancer then got banished, and then we actually questioned if it was a draw, because there was no draw condition, or what was, and if I remember correctly, I then text you later being like, actually, turns out I won. Yeah. I remember playing it, and I was just throwing the Necromancer into pretty much every combat, and that was my downfall, because I wasn't using my will effectively, because every time the Necromancer is in combat, he loses a will, and therefore kind of I just wasn't doing will management essentially. But scenario number 2, the Gathering of Evil. So this one is a couple of Mirkwood Rangers against the Necromancer and a bunch of orcs. If I remember correctly, this was when they were trying to take over Mirkwood. According to this, we have Evil won as both. Can you remember anything about the scenario or kind of how it went? If I remember correctly, it was purely good couldn't get line of sight on shooting. It wasn't any good. And with the amount of orcs and the Necromancer, they just steamrolled through the elves. It's not that I didn't enjoy the scenario, but it was certainly one of the lower ones on my enjoyment list, if you want to say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The darkness descends. Good models can only see up to 6 inches in this scenario. This is where Sauron is casting the gloom, this murky pallor onto the greenwood, turning it into mirkwood, and it really, really sucked for the elves. It really sucked for the elves.
There was no quarter given, sort of thing. Yeah, it didn't work for them. And like I say, you just couldn't get a shot off as good to then try and kill orcs, or even try and win the Necromancer at all.
Because as you'll have seen, as you're going through the campaign, I really, really like my shooting. I really like my shooting, and it was not feasible in this scenario at all. Because if I tried to move close enough that I could shoot, I would just be charged, and Cammy wouldn't move close enough to me to allow me to shoot. He would just stay out of range if you had the option to.
It was a bit of a tough one to try and win as good. But I suppose the whole idea of it is Sauron does come, he does take over the Greenwood and corrupt it.
Still fun though.
Yes. Now we've got the corruption of the Greenwood for scenario number 3. You won this as both sides, and this one was the Castellans and Mirkwood spiders, giant spiders, and all that sort of stuff against 22 Mirkwood Rangers. If I remember correctly, this is when we were trying to save some trees and go around, and I was bouncing all over them, trying to uncorrupt some trees. I got swarmed when I was playing as the good, if I remember correctly, and kind of spread myself a bit too thin. And as the evil, I just wasn't able to get into the correct places that I felt that I need to. The fact that you were corrupting trees, I think, was a nice change of like a special rule sort of thing, something that interacted with the terrain. It was nice for the scenario and all that sort of stuff. But for me, I didn't play the objective, probably was the easiest and best way to put it, or not as well as I should have. But what do you think of this scenario?
I mean, I'm reading through the rules here. Spiders don't come back in this scenario,
No.
and I think that's where I won is good, because I set up a volley line and just got 2 or 3 turns of good shooting. Obviously moved 3 inches back to maybe get an extra turn, even if I'm getting a -1, so hitting on 4s instead of 3s. And that's where it went wrong. I also vaguely remember one Mirkwood Ranger putting in a ton of work over on one flank and then running up to uncorrupt an objective to secure the win. As evil, Cammy didn't get the same amount of shooting. And I think
I walked forward rather than staying in that almost gun line sort of thing, and therefore you could charge me quicker, if I remember.
Isn't that because I stayed back?
It quite possibly was, because you stayed back, so I then had to move potentially. I can't remember exactly, but it was certainly something along those lines. But overall, a nice scenario, interesting in the sense of you interact with the terrain, and certainly one of kind of closer up to the better ones. Certainly midway, if not above midway, in terms of enjoyment. Next one then, the Lurking Shadow. This is your Mirkwood Rangers against your Spider Queen. And is this one where the spiders do come back? Yes, it is. The first time the spiders come back. And this was won by evil both times. I hate it when the spiders come back. Because you always seem to manage to get the spiders to come back, and I never really seem to manage. I know that the campaign bonuses allowed you to get them back on 3s instead of 4s, and those sorts of things. But actually, because I lost as evil, I don't get those special rules, but you do, which then means you're getting your spiders back on, what is it, 66% rather than the 50% I am. But
I think it comes back on a 5 and you got it on a 6.
On a 6, that's what it is. But anyway, I'm certainly not getting it back as easily as you are, and that it didn't hinder my enjoyment of the scenarios. And actually, this goes for all these kinds of scenarios that the spiders do come back on. I never seem to roll well on those. And okay, sure, I blame the dice sort of thing. That's not necessarily what I'm doing. It's just I'm not fond of that mechanic necessarily because it is purely down to luck. And yes, we're playing a dice game,
Yes.
but I get bad rolls on them, and I always seem to get bad rolls, whereas you always seem to get good rolls, whether that's the campaign bonus or not. But lurking in the shadows, what do you think of this scenario?
This wasn't one of the worst scenarios, but it definitely was a bit down the ladder for me. I like the revive mechanic, but in this campaign, I do feel like it was overdone because you had four
or five scenarios with it, yeah.
Including the Nazgul of Dol Guldur. 4 or 5.
Actually, yes, because they can obviously come back in the last scenario, which we have just played, by the way, as in like 20 minutes ago, just played. But
it's a fun mechanic, but it does feel a wee bit overdone, this campaign.
Yeah.
Obviously spoiled my enjoyment of it. And I do feel, even though we were playing on a slightly smaller board for this.
For actually all of the campaign, we were minus maybe 1 or 2 of the scenarios. For example, the last scenario, we played that on the proper size board. And then actually, I think the second last scenario as well was played on very similar sizes. But my thoughts on that was the consistency of every single game is played on the same size of board. And to be fair, there are some games that definitely need the recommended board size, and that's pretty fair. There's a reason they've recommended those board sizes, but we changed those purely for the place that we were playing.
I think it might have impacted Good's chances there, because a slightly smaller board means less shitting, even if the spiders are coming back.
Yeah.
But this would have ranked about 9th or 10th for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Scenario number 5 then, so Flight to the East. This is the only scenario that drew, so I managed to draw it when I was playing Evil. Matthew won it as Evil though. So this is Gandalf against the Castellans of Dol Guldur with Saruman, or the Necromancer, but this is when the Necromancer was a base. And you had 6 bases, you couldn't remember which one, or you didn't know which one he was as Gandalf, and kind of just wandered up and kept on going. This scenario I really liked purely because of that base mechanic. Again, it's one of these, I'll say it's a gimmick.
Yeah, it's a gimmick, but done well.
Of this scenario and then the campaigns. I like gimmicks, things that take away from what would essentially just be a matched play scenario, or an unbalanced match play scenario, I suppose would be an easier way and better way to put it. But it's a nice little change to these sorts of things. What did you think of this one, though?
This one I really liked, because instead of it being about the models on the table, the Castellans and Gandalf, it is about trying to mind play your opponent into going for the wrong base and not revealing the Necromancer so you can get him off the board. I really, really enjoyed that. It's a strategy game. There's obviously a lot of thought involved, but this scenario takes it to the next level. It is definitely one of my favourites.
If I remember correctly, you ran one of your bases up what would be my left-hand side, and you ran the other 5 up your right. And I went, either he's double bluffing me, or I'm an idiot. And I went for that one, and turns out I'm an idiot. And that's how I then lost it, was because I couldn't then get Gandalf back over to the other sides to then find out which one the Necromancer was. Whereas if I remember correctly, you found the Necromancer, he just managed to get off the board though anyway. It was certainly a good one, and you said strategy there. You had a strategy, and I fell for your ploy in it.
I also used the Castellans to block line of sight, which was really, really good, because if I hadn't used that, I believe there was one turn where you would have actually found them.
Yeah. Whereas I couldn't see through them, but I think actually I forgot that you couldn't see through them, so you did manage to actually get through them. But scenario number 6 then, so almost halfway through with this, the Watchful Peace. So this is when we have our lovely Legolas boy coming in for the first time, and this is this was won by both of us playing as the evil side. If I remember correctly, it's just slaughter the elves or slaughter the orcs. Kind of if Legolas dies, the game ends immediately, if I remember correctly. And I think that's how I managed to win against you. I was chasing Legolas essentially round the edge of the board, trying to get him, trying to kill him. I can see you're reading it over the shoulder here, but what do you think of this scenario?
As I remember this, I put up Legolas on my left flank to prep, to sort of get off some deadly shots, take out some orcs, and one of your captains, it was the one with the mace, wasn't it?
Yep.
It just came up and bonked him.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get away. That was very disappointing. You just instantly won that. As evil, I don't actually remember much. I remember winning, but I think it was a lot closer.
It may well have come down to the wire when you were winning, but not a very memorable game, I'll say. It wasn't bad because of that, but it was just a kill game. Orcs versus elves, just let's kill them, let's kill each other, see what we could get done. But like I say, nothing too memorable. We then have scenario number 7 though, which was the clearing of the nests. And this is the first time that Tariel comes in. So you have Tariel and Legolas with a bunch of elves against a bunch of spiders.
And this is the second revive scenario.
If I remember correctly, is there nests in this one?
More where they came from.
Yeah, okay, so it's reviving again and again and again. And I don't mind spiders in terms of in real life. I hate spiders in Middle Earth because they just seem to. I suppose I only ever really have the expectation now of this campaign, but I hate it. I don't enjoy spiders now. And as this both times the spiders won, they just managed to swarm and swarm and swarm, and they kept on coming back, kept on doing various things, and killed the elves eventually.
Particularly because Evil won both of the preceding scenarios. They came back on a 4 instead of 5.
Yeah.
Which obviously it's a 1 in 2 chance instead of a 1 in 3. There was a turn or two where I had 4 or 5 spiders lined up to come on, and it just
every single time.
High.
Yeah, just rolling high.
I'm going to be honest and say this doesn't really. I didn't really like this scenario. It does seem particularly weighted. I'm all for the gimmick. I like the revives. Maybe tone it down a wee bit.
Yeah.
Maybe make it a 6, or say that each spider can only come back once. Would be really, really cool. It would make it a bit fairer, and it would actually, good would actually have a tangible shot at winning.
Yeah. One of the things we also questioned at one point was if a spider dies turn 3, let's say, you roll turn 4 to see if they come back. They didn't come back, let's say, that turn. And then we were still questioning whether we should roll on turn 5 to see if they came back. We came down to the answer being yes, but actually if it had been they didn't come back turn 4, therefore they are out the game completely, then you are whittling down that reserve of spiders rather than just that infinite amount of spiders. We couldn't find it in the rules whether you would roll turn 5 or not, so we just ruled that you would because it didn't say that you didn't, and it says that you put spiders away at the end of the turn and you roll for them for the next preceding phase or something. I can't remember the exact word and I'm not going to read it just now. But it was one of these, hang on a sec, are we meant to do this? And maybe if that had been the rule, that you don't roll for them after the first turn that they died, maybe that would have made this reviving gimmick slightly better and not soured my taste in the matter, at least.
I was constantly getting spiders back, and Nazgul as well in the final scenario. Cammy got several Nazgul back. I think you got the lingering shadow back 3 or 4 times.
Certainly was a few times. And to be fair, with the Nazgul, I don't think it's as bad. To be fair, gameplay-wise, it should be worse because they reappear pretty much where they were. But the spiders should appear further back and that sort of thing. But at the same point, for the Nazgul, I feel like it makes sense, especially because they were against a more powerful army, such as the Vanquishers and the Necromancer. Yeah. But it did seem a bit off for for the spiders.
Yes.
But scenario number 8, attack on Ruskavel, however you want to pronounce it. It is the one where Radagast was running around trying to find his 6 little creature friends and stop it's only 4 Mirkwood spiders, to be fair, it's not many. And somehow evil won both times.
The thing is, right, this was when we questioned what exactly the spiders do. Now, they are throwing, their webs count as a throwing weapon.
Yep.
Hits on a 5-up, and they suffer the effect of the paralyzed magical power, which we took to mean as it's a throwing weapon, and they suffer the effects of the magical power, but not the magic power itself. So Radagast can't resist it.
Yep.
And it basically became a game of how quickly can you paralyze Radagast.
And as soon as you paralyze him,
game over.
Yeah, he's on the ground. He can't make the fight rolls, so you're just beating a wizard on the ground. And it's how quickly can you kill him. In terms of how it could have been, I think it's a very nice potential to a scenario. I mean, the picture they've got there looks awfully nice. If I had managed to make a Radagast's hut, it would have looked gorgeous. But in terms of actual scenario and gameplay, maybe on what's this? This recommends a 2x2. We played it on, I think it was a 30x20 game board, so it wasn't square. But on a 2x2, you can see one in front of you now. There's not going to be really much change to the way that we played it. Ours was slightly thinner and slightly longer, but I'd be interested to play this again. Attempting to almost do it better now that we know a few things, and I suppose now we know how Radagast works as well. We did have to learn how each of these characters played every single time that a new one arrived, really. And
I actually quite liked about the campaign, because you do start off with the Necromancer, you get a wee crash course in magic, and then obviously you've got your elves and your spiders coming in, and they introduce Gandalf and Radagast over time, and you get to come to grips. You get a scenario or two to come to grips with each major hero on the good side, apart from the latter members of the White Council that show up in the final one.
I was going to say, in the final mission, you're screwed. You have to learn everything for everyone instantly. There's no beating around the bush or trying to figure that out along the way sort of thing. No, it's there and you have to learn, which wasn't a bad thing, to be fair. We had 2 out of 3 of the members already, but it's just trying to remember Galadriel does a -1 to courage sort of thing. It's like, we have to remember that every single time. But
Saruman had an interesting spell as well, Aura of Command, which we had to learn.
Never came into effect previously, so then we had to have that. But in terms of this scenario,
I would like to play it again.
Yeah.
I would like to play it with more terrain on the board.
Yes.
Because that could have an impact on spiders being able to throw webs.
Yes. Line of sight blocking.
Something more along the lines of our Dogwall Door terrain. For the Gandalf and Thune scenario.
Yeah. Which, to be fair, terrain is going to be something that I comment on in this one. So this is the exploration of Dorwell Doer. This scenario is certainly, in our opinion, the worst scenario, not necessarily just in the book, but ever. This is the worst one I've ever played, at least. And just so you guys remember, Good won both times. And by won, I mean walked off the board and had to do nothing.
Cammy's more of a competitive player. I like my narrative play. I like battle companies as well.
Competitive player in the sense of I win wooden spoons.
Yes. He likes to go to tournaments.
Yes, that's better.
I like to stay at home reading scenarios. This is easily the worst one that I have ever read or done. And that includes a lot of the old White Dwarf ones. I did not like this one. I do not think it was well thought out. I do want to replay it, and I want to replay it with more terrain, because that could impact the result. But it did seem like Radagast walked up, had a look at a couple of the statues, commented on the architecture. The Witch King was having a snooze, woke up, saw Radagast, popped out, and they both looked at each other like the Spider-Man going, And Radagast ran away.
Yeah, there was not really anything to this scenario, certainly from what we played of it. It didn't work, certainly the way that I imagine it was intended, because it may well have been played multiple times, test played and all that sort of stuff, and it worked, but for somehow we broke it. I don't know what we did wrong, potentially. There was the one event where you searched the sorry, I think I searched the statue and it was the Witch King. They could have been put in base contact at that point. That's the only time that, as far as we can tell, that we did a rule wrong. So essentially the Witch King could have got that round of combat. But all that then happened was the Witch King was Sorceress Blasted and Radagast, so Sorceress Blasted back, whatever, and Radagast then walked off the board. Whether that was using heroic moves to move first, or whether that was just winning priority, but Radagast just walked and walked and walked. What I'm thinking is if we have terrain like we did in one of the later scenarios, the capture of the Grey Wizard, if we had terrain like that, then maybe the Sorcerer's Blast couldn't have happened on the second or third, purely because you wouldn't have line of sight round corners.
It's Nature's Wrath with Radagast though.
Oh, sorry,
surely
Nature's
that would
Wrath,
still
yes.
take effect, even with the errata update, meaning it's 3 inches instead of 6.
Yes.
We were playing it as 6 inches up until the final scenario when a staff member from GW came and was like, you know that was errated a few months ago.
Back when he was like, hey, check the FAQ, because that's changed. So true, maybe that is one of these things, but actually this scenario was concepted with Nature's Wrath being 6 inches.
Yeah.
So we were still playing it the way that it was originally play tested. And that just kind of baffles me.
Even then, you are, instead of evil and good both getting a turn, it is good just moving, casting whatever they want to. You've got
for however many rounds to start off with, you can cast whatever you want on yourself. Is it Terrifying Aura that we put up? It won't be in here, but Terrifying Aura, I think it is. And then you channel it, so it's D3 dice discarding highest. And the Witch King isn't fearless, therefore has to do it. And don't get me wrong, the charges, no, the courage tests certainly were being passed potentially, but there is that option of the possibility of not passing, and especially because I have as many turns in the world to get to that point. What could potentially be better is if you have 6, 7 turns before the Witch King automatically appears, regardless of you searching the correct statue or not, and then at that point it could happen.
I thought perhaps maybe the statue should be spread further out, and maybe instead of moving, the Witch King could relocate to another statue. That would be another way of doing it. And when you're talking about Terrifying Aura or whatever the spell is, I actually have a thought that I thought of ages ago. Is it the Explanation of Dumbledore? What is it?
What are you thinking of?
There's a scenario, Flight to the East, right? I think it is, where Gandalf weaves a spell around himself. It's one of the special rules, and it says that he causes terror in this scenario.
Yes.
What I would like to know is, would that then mean that you couldn't cast this channeled magical power?
So actually it's the next one.
It's the next one. Would that mean that you couldn't channel this magical power that causes terror and causes the enemy to roll 3 dice and discard the highest?
Because he already causes it. Yeah, that's a potential. But anyway, moving on to, at this point, one of probably our favourite scenarios.
Definitely.
Then. And this is Thrain the Broken, where, if I remember correctly, you won us both sides.
Yes.
So going from one of our least favourite, or in fact, going from our least favourite scenario to one of our favourite ones, Thrain the Broken. If you have seen the video, you will remember the lovely masking tape terrain. Thank you very much, GW, for allowing me to use your masking tape, and I did replace it in the end. We had to get some way of kind of showing what that looks like on a tabletop, but it worked quite well. It was really, really good. Gandalf versus Thrain and 5 Hunter Orcs. I didn't really know what to expect from the scenario to start off with, but it turns out it was a really good one. And it wasn't just because it looked terrible when I made it. It was just really enjoyable, and I liked playing it. But what about yourself?
I thought this, going back to talking about strategy and trying to outthink and outwit your opponent, I thought this was another really, really good scenario for that. Obviously, you have your five Hunter Orcs, right? Yep. For one for each objective. And they start off as sentries.
Yeah.
Now, sentries can't move and attack as normal. You have to roll a dice to determine how they move. They are on a low roll. They might even move away. The other player might get to decide what way they move. And only once the alarm has been raised, once they are close to an enemy, does the effect wear off. And they get to move and charge as normal. In addition, Thrain's interesting because of his Shattered Spirit special rule. And Gandalf causes tether and needs to cast a lot of magic, a lot of dispels on the objectives. It's a really, really fun scenario. If you are going to play one scenario from this campaign, please let it be this one.
Thrain the Broken, definitely. And it's only 7 models that you need. So yeah, definitely.
Gandalf, Thrain, 5 Hunter Orcs.
Well, in that case, not really much more than we can say about that, because it was great. We thoroughly enjoyed it. Capture of the Grey Wizard then, going from, again, one of the best scenarios onto an even better scenario at this point. This was Thrain and Gandalf running away from Azog and 4 Hunter Orcs to start off with, but obviously gaining reinforcements and potentially the Necromancer at the end. I really liked this as both evil and good. I think I enjoyed it more as good because I enjoyed trying to weave in and out of all the terrain, figuring out when to cast magic powers, whether I should stay back with Thrain because he only has 5 inches rather than the 6, and actually even Thrain's Shattered Spirits or whatever the special rule for him, figuring out if he's good or evil. It was just those sorts of rules that and scenario that it was good fun for me. But what about, and for everyone else, evil won both times. So I'm saying I really enjoyed it as good. I enjoyed losing it as good. But what do you think?
I really liked it, and I did like the wee note that the designers put at the bottom saying good probably won't win this scenario. And you read that and you don't mind going into it, because it's about the thrill. You do feel like you are Gandalf and Thrain, and you're running, trying to outrun packs of Hunter Orcs.
On Fell Wargs.
You, as the evil player, on the other hand, you get the thrill of the chase. You start off with 5 Hunter Orcs?
4 and Azog.
4 and Azog. Now, Azog can move off the board, and you get a bonus to trying to see if the Necromancer comes on, which is a different way to play it. Me and Cammy both decided that we were going to stick with Azog, and we were going to just try and relentlessly chase down Gandalf and Thrain with him, because...
The question with that is, why did you keep Azog instead of taking the Necromancer or the Necromancer bonus?
Well, I knew that Azog was really, really good in a fight. I've never played Hunter Orcs. I've never really played that army bonus. I never really played against it. Don't know how it works. And then I was rolling dice for the first round of combat that had Azog in it. Azog versus Gandalf. And Cammy said, look at his special rule. I think it's I Am the Master, is it?
I can't remember the name of it, but I presume you're thinking of the one that he always wins on a 3+, or wins hero models on the 3+. So that's the exact same reason that I kept him on the board rather than running off. I'm a fan of Azog just in general. I'm on pretty much anything and everything. And I've played Azog's Legion in a number of tournaments and lost, I think, every single game with them. But yes, I knew that special rule was there, and I went, nah, I'm having Gandalf with this. And I think both of us, or certainly I remember I slayed your Gandalf, and I think you slayed my Gandalf with Azog.
You were a lot closer to escaping though.
Yeah, about 2 inches.
It was more than 2 inches, wasn't it?
Oh no, it was very close. Maybe a turn, sort of in terms of 6-inch movement or whatever. But we were both very close to the chasm and the bridge. But yeah, Capture the Grey Wizard overall good scenario.
Good scenario, very good.
Make Haste to Dorgle Dur then, the second last scenario. Now, for us, we played this yesterday. For the guys watching this video, it was 2 weeks ago that they will have watched this. So Make Haste to Dorgle Dur, you got Radagast on Slay, running towards Gandalf, trying to get there and see what he can, see if he can get there to Gandalf's age. And it's against 12 spiders, 6 Mirkwood, 6 giant spiders. And again, I hate this scenario because of the respawning mechanic. However, I do really enjoy this scenario because it's literally just get from point A to point B and avoid all the enemies. And I laughed a lot while playing this scenario. It wasn't necessarily the scenario. The scenario itself was good. It's that the scenario was fun. And I can't really say why the scenario was fun, other than the fact of just the rolls and the movement and Radagast currently sitting on top of a tree turn 1 because he's got woodland creature. It just looked stupid, but that was the fun part of it. You dismounted my Radagast turn 2, and that was under 20 inches from the board edge, because I went diagonal and then up, let's say. And then at that point, I walked the rest of the way up that, and we played it on a very close to a 6x4 board. And I made it, and I won. I as evil and as good won both times. So I killed Matthew's Radagast, and I got my Radagast off the board. And maybe that was what I enjoyed about it. I thrashed you sort of thing as the evil, and then really enjoyed playing as the good. So I just enjoyed winning there. But as a whole, I thought this scenario was really good.
I liked it, and going back to talking about gimmicks, the reason I like this scenario so much is the gimmick. You have Radagast charging forward to try and rescue Gandalf from the clutches of the Necromancer and the Keeper of the Dungeons, and in his haste to Dol Guldur, he is just trampling spiders with his Ruskavel rabbits. When he charges into combat, he inflicts 2 strength 3 hits in a similar way to the
chariots or the Farharad camels, actually even the Mummock, that sort of stuff.
And similar to them or to throwing weapons, on a successful kill, he can charge again or complete his movement however he pleases. It is a gimmick, and a gimmick done well.
And if I remember correctly, you managed to trample over 3 of my spiders in 1 turn.
I had a trample counter at the side of the spiders squished. I think the final count was about 4 or 5. Very fun scenario.
Great scenario. Cannot complain about it at all. I enjoyed winning as both sides, obviously, and I am the best Radagast. But a good scenario just in general. Thoroughly enjoyable.
The reason you're so good at Radagast is that Radagast doesn't have a shooting attack.
Therefore, I don't need to worry about it. But then, going on to the last scenario, the one that we played now, looking at this time, about an hour ago, because we have talked for far too long, but I don't care because this is how I do videos. But the Fall of the Necromancer. So this is the White Council versus Keeper of the Dungeons, then the 9, then the Necromancer. If the 9 are still alive, they are also still there. And you have Galadriel, Gandalf, Saruman, Elrond, and I can't remember Gandalf, but Gandalf's bloody paralysed for the whole fucking game if you're me. And he can't do anything, he can't even make strikes, he can't even... in general though, really enjoyable game, really fun. I enjoyed it. Playing as good and evil, and you won as both sides on this. There was nothing that I could have really done. It just didn't work. But what do you think of this scenario?
I liked it. I'm not really sure what to say about it. Obviously, the Nazgul get to come back quite a bit. They come back on a 3-up at the end of turn 9, so starting turn 10. they come back on a 2-up when the Necromancer arrives.
Yep.
I think the only reason I won, because obviously Scenario 13 video will be out by now.
Yes, yes.
I won because I was able to catch his Saruman by surprise, because he was forced to put Saruman and Elrond on because I had the Keeper of the Dungeon that was thrashing Gandalf.
Yeah.
And Galadriel couldn't really do anything about it. So he brought on Saruman, and Elrond, and then I brought on the Nazgul, surrounded him, trapped him with the Lingering Shadow, Camille, and the Headsman, and just wiped him out in one turn of combat.
Six wounds you caused, and he had 3 fate and 3 wounds, so there was no chance of me doing it regardless of what was happening. They were all going through. Saruman died turn 1 that he came on, and what are you going to do at that point, sort of thing. There wasn't really anything. So,
especially because I relied on Saruman so much. Sorceress Blasts, Aura of Command, which is just fantastic for the good player in this scenario.
When you played as the good, you used Saruman to literally the best of his ability, whereas as soon as he died with me, I went, crap, that's game. Yeah. Now, I didn't concede, I didn't stop or anything at that point, but I knew at that moment it was going to be an uphill battle, because I've lost possibly my most my best magic caster at that point. Don't get me wrong, the rest of them have got good magic,
yes,
and it works quite well and all that sort of stuff. But Saruman, he's so good, and he died turn 1, or turn 1 of him being on. Just what are you going to do?
Blast on a 4-up, Command on a 3-up, which I believe for Gandalf would be a 4-up, and he gets to re-roll a single casting of resist dice every time he casts or resists. It's
he's good.
It's incredible.
But yeah, overall, I didn't. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy this scenario as the good player. It was that it was an uphill battle for me, whereas I felt that it was more evenly matched when I was evil and you were good. It seemed to be kind of back and forth, and that was fine. But yeah, that's all the scenarios. In general, Matthew, what do you think of all the scenarios, and then what do you think of campaign bonus idea for this? Do you think that this campaign is worth it? Did you enjoy it?
I do think it's worth it. I think a couple of the scenarios we would need to change up, obviously, with regards to scenery and terrain.
Yeah.
A couple of them should probably have had a bit more. A couple of them we should probably errata the rules a wee bit, make them a wee bit fairer, and perhaps do something to stop the revives, the constant reviving.
Yeah.
But by and large, very, very good campaign, very worth it.
Dog's underneath the table wanting love, so we should possibly wrap it up. But yes, very good campaign, great scenarios, and we are going to play a couple of them again, including our least favourite one, just to see if we can make it better. But yeah, nothing more than we really need to say now. Is there? No. Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. I appreciate you all being here. Please like, comment, subscribe, all the crap that I hate saying, because it unfortunately does help. Don't forget to check the description below for my Element Games and Noble Knight Gaming affiliate links. Anything that you guys put towards that genuinely does help me out. It allows me to buy things such as this book, the Defence of the North book, which has just come out as of today, but like 2 weeks ago now that you guys are watching this, and that has helped me pay for them, so I genuinely appreciate it. But until the next video, guys, thank you very much for watching, take care, and bye-bye. Thanks very much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and use my affiliate links in the description below. Take care and bye-bye.